total monster on me.
What?
All the pain I have to go through.
Pain, the suffering.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
No,
Yeah.
I mean physical pain.
Don't put us all in a room with knives. Who knows what happens?
Okay, we're live. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining. This is Essence of Medicine. Today, we're going to be talking about mental health in the U.S. I'm Amanda Armagast.
I'm Melissa Hopper.
Dominic Moore.
And I'm Dr. Abbasi for Essence. Wow, what a loaded topic.
Very
What
loaded
did-
and very evolving.
Why did you choose that topic, Amanda? You were very eager to choose that topic.
I just think it's an important topic to retouch on maybe once a year and to let people know that it's okay if you're having mental health struggles. It's totally normal and it's part of medicine.
Okay, well, you're a little further away from from Alyssa and Dom. Do I
Well,
feel some tension there?
No, the person I'm furthest away from is you. It's because I don't want to bother Alyssa by touching her feet with my feet.
Oh, I see.
There's like this post
I
here.
think there's an equal amount of distance, but
Yeah. So, why mental health US? Why not talk about mental health as a general?
I don't think that this is a good group to talk about mental health as a general because all of us live in the US, and the three of us, me, Alyssa, and Dominic, pretty much have not had any mental health struggles outside of the US or had to go to therapy outside of the US or anything like that, correct?
yep,
Yeah.
my knowledge is pretty limited
Okay.
outside of the US.
Same.
I'd also say it definitely stems from like a difference in cultural things. So, for example, different cultures view mental health in a different capacity. For some people, it's more of a personal structure. Stoicism is more tightly ingrained in some Eastern cultures, and so expressing mental health is a lot harder. And the gamut in between being fine and suicide over there is pretty much those are the only two alternatives you have. So,
Yeah.
probably best for us to sort of stay in our sphere.
Yeah, I think
Dominic, I think you have traveled to Asian countries, and you're absolutely right that there is a stigma attached to mental health problems. But until recently, as well, we would in United States we would hush it. That's just a recent thing that we can openly talk about mental health in US now. But I think I can safely say the percentages of mental health issue globally is the same. It is just in US, the only thing is different, we talk more about it. And I know you three young people with more or less mental health issues may think that it is bad in the United States, but I can guarantee you it's much worse everywhere else. Because what we like, I'm going to give you one analogy. Like we all talk about shooting and death and accident and so on. I think the only thing different is that from now until a long time ago is that now we have social media, we have TV, and you see that. As a matter of fact, I recommend to every single person who's listening to this, go read Steven Pinker. He's a linguist and philosopher, and he brings the data considering the past and now. We have never been better, safer, healthier ever in the history of humanity. But there's a problem here. We all of a sudden it's okay to talk about it. It is no, we are not perfect. I completely admit that, and we have a long way to go. But we have never been better than this. So we will go into that, and we complain our lungs out. But this is the data. Humanity, especially United States, has never ever been better than it is now based on actual data. So having said that, again, that does not mean that we don't have work to do and a lot of, so what specific, let's go around, let's set up the stage. Dominic, what would you like to get at? We are going to talk about 40 minutes. What would you like to get out of it?
Oh, geez. I feel like,
what would you like to talk about?
Well, I have a lot of experience with people in my life having mental health struggles. It's actually the only tattoos I have are for people who have died by suicide and stuff like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like that's just so far for the extreme. I kind of want to get to the point of we have a lot in today's culture where we talk about, oh, talk about it, talk
Mhm.
about it, express your feelings. But I don't actually think that that's getting the message across that it should be. That's a lot of let's talk about rain and hope that it changes the weather. That doesn't, that's not quite how things work. And I kind of want to focus a little bit more on what should be done to help instead of just talking about it. Because you can complain all
Yeah.
you want, but it doesn't fix anything.
That's a really good point. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
because I know there's so much awareness and acceptance of mental health and mental health struggles,
Mhm.
but that's almost kind of where it ends is like, oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry you're sad, like it'll be okay,
Mhm.
or go to a therapist and talk about it. But that's almost like the extent, not like,
Mhm.
oh, well, what
Mhm.
hobbies are you doing? How is your other types of health? What are you eating?
So should we talk about then, Alyssa, I want you as well hear you
Yeah.
about what do you want to talk about and what are your goals on this podcast?
Oh man, anybody that knows me knows I could probably talk about this topic for days. And I guess the thing, if I were to add in anything, I would be interested in discussing the generational changes between mental health. Just because a lot of us are growing up, or have grown up in the era of mental health is talked about, where you start to see that in parents and grandparents and the less openness of it all. So I think that would be kind of interesting for me to discuss with you guys.
I agree with Alyssa. That's what I wanted to talk about is kind of the evolution of mental
Mhm.
health. Like now
Yeah.
Minnesota, right, introduced mental health days. So if you're feeling like you need a mental health recovery day, I'm pretty sure Minnesota is the state that I
Yep.
don't think it's federal.
Correct. I believe I was on a Minnesota level too,
Mhm.
and I believe it had something to do with the part-time hourly workers who typically, when you are salaried, you get PTO or you get sick days that are paid, but when you're hourly, you do not get paid time off typically. So I think Minnesota had passed a law that you're able to take paid time off to better yourself mentally, which I
Now, I want to talk about something that, Alyssa, you come from South Dakota, Dominic, you come from Florida. So only Minnesotan here is you, Amanda. And I know you're very proud of your state. Go Minnesota. But do you know what the rest of the country thinks about Minnesotan regarding the?
don't think South Dakota is going to be able to say much because I know what the rest of the United States says about South Dakota.
I'll
too.
be honest, Florida does not
Florida?
think about Minnesota.
So the rest of the country thinks being Minnesotan and being depressed is more or less they go together.
Really?
I think so. I've heard it a lot
Who
from
told you that?
It's cold and gloomy.
lots
I
of
can see it.
people. Lots of
Lots
people.
of people?
Yeah.
Like when you think about Washington, Seattle, Washington,
Yeah.
people forget that there's half of the state over there that isn't drowning in dark clouds every day.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody thinks Minnesota is always winter, is always snow. People always go inside, close the doors. Now, on your back, you're talking a lot about Minnesota. And now, there is some truth into that. The depression and the sunny days and the amount of sun and the warm weather you get, they go hand in hand. Like in Northern Europe, where most of the from Northern Europe have populated Minnesota and Upper Midwest, the depression is much, much higher than in Southern Europe, like Italy or Spain and so on. Okay, this is just the statistical fact. Now, but talking about the mental health, I have a feeling that depression is a big part of it. Depression is not the only mental health. What other mental health do we think it is important to talk about besides the depression?
Anxieties are usually a really big one.
Yes, anxiety.
Typically coincided nowadays as well.
Yeah.
Or I think that something important to talk about is actually on the other side of depression, people that are manic. A lot of times people that are depressed have stages of
Bipolar.
yeah.
That goes hand in hand. Bipolar and depression and the manic events, they sometimes go hand in hand. Okay. So we talked about anxiety, we talked about the depression. What else? Now, if you do, I'm not sure you guys are not old enough to know the old kind of classification of psychological disease. We have made it go away. It didn't really work that way, but it was easy. to understand. So I want to mention it. So a
Hmm.
little bit of history. The old, psychiatric doctors and so on, they divided psychiatric disease in neurosis and psychosis. Do you guys know what the difference is?
When I grew, like in my school, we had 3 and I can't remember them all. They were mad, sad, and glad is
Mhm.
how we did it. And it's that same thing where there's egosyntonic where, you don't know it's a problem. It makes you happy. That's more of the happy. And then you have the opposite, which
Yeah.
those are the categories you're going into as well.
We know that this classification doesn't work, but it is good to know that because it makes it easy. The psychosis, classical psychosis is like what? What do you think a classical psychosis is?
Schizophrenias.
Schizophrenia, yeah, that
Mm.
you lose the connection to reality.
Mhm.
Okay? And then the classical neurosis is that the reality impair your life. You cannot keep up with reality. You understand the reality, but the reality makes you sad. The reality makes you anxious. The reality makes you like you want to spend all your money and so on. So this two direction, we know it's much more complex than that. I have a feeling that we won't have time about talking about all the mental health issue like psychosis, schizophrenia. That is a word for itself. I would like to concentrate today on anxiety and depression, if you guys are okay with that, because I think that's material.
Definitely.
Especially, we got to note that you had talked about, I guess, Minnesota. What season we're in right now is, we just started spring, but we have really bad seasonal depression around here. You talked about being in the northern weathers. We have that thing called seasonal depression.
Mhm.
Where these winter
Matter of
months
fact,
without
it's
sun
usually-
and vitamin D really gets us down. I mean, I know I've been affected by it probably nearly every year. I can
Yeah.
understand.
And as a matter of fact, we send them south. It used to be that one of the in the northern Europe, when they don't have sun enough, those people who can afford it, the doctor would prescribe them, go to Italy, go to Spain, go get some sun, and so on. And you understand from your
Yeah, I
own
was gonna say how
Insurance?
Blue Cross Blue Shield.
No, but you understand from your own life that you wake up, it's a dark, cold, it goes to your bone, versus you wake up, sun is there, and the birds are chirping and so on. It is a realistic thing. So don't mind the rest of the country that we think Minnesotans are chronically depressed, Amanda. It's not the value distribution, it's just the fact that the depression in northern states are much higher than in southern states. Now, having said that, you talked about seasonal depression, but what is depression? And anxiety. We'll come back to anxiety. What is depression?
Gosh, so I mean, it's a constellation of different symptoms, but essentially it can go anywhere from you sleep too much, you don't sleep enough, you have little motivation to do things that used to bring you pleasure, all sorts of just sort of, it's like apathy kind of overtaking you. You've realized that you're not feeling well, you're not enjoying things, and it's not oh, well, I just don't like that. It's I should like that.
Right.
I know that I like that, but
That's
I don't.
I
just don't.
often people describe it as like almost an out-of-body experience. Like, this is who you are, but this isn't me. You start to lose control over the smallest things, the decision makings, every little aspect of your life becomes more challenging typically. And that's just that you said it's an overload that then makes you shut down,
Yeah.
essentially.
Well, and there's different levels too to depression. Is that what you were about to
I was
say?
going to say, I want to make sure we're kind of clear too, because depression is like when you get to the last part of it, before that, there's a different categorization of it. It's like cythemic, for example, where that's I feel down. I'm not having a good time. Life is tough. I don't really like things right now. Depression is am I going to leave the house today? I just,
And again,
No.
something called adjustment disorder, which is, the category and, I had a family member who passed away and now I'm very sad and I'm going through a tough time. But in 2 months, I get over and I'm getting okay. There's kind of a difference between a situation and a actual kind of a depression based.
Yeah, like
So
depression
let's
versus depressive episode.
talk about that medically and scientifically, okay? Now, if your cat dies, you will be sad. If your cat dies and you're not sad, you're a psychopath.
Yeah. Mhm.
Can we agree on that?
Yes.
If your
Mhm.
grandmother died and you're happy, you're not a good person.
Well, depending on your grandpa, I think.
I'm under, I'm
Doesn't fight
I'm-
Let's
no,
assume
we
our
can argue
grandpa's a
everything.
good guy.
We can argue everything, but generally, if you hear that your grandma died and you start celebrating, you are not a good person. So there is a so-called reactive, or it's kind of the depression that you're reacting to the event, which is normal. But then there is something that we call the depression as a disease, that you cannot feel joy, you cannot practically you're not motivated, and there's nothing that can give you joy. It's not like your cat died. I can make your cat alive again, and then you will be happy.
Mhm, mhm.
You see that there? If your depression is the reaction to the events, and then that's normal. But then if practically your depression is a status of mind that there's really nothing can counteract that, then it becomes a disease. Now, this is one of those areas that medically and scientifically, the quantity becomes quality. Now, imagine your cat dies the first day, your dog dies the next day, your grandmother died the third day, and then you lose your job. And based on that, your relation goes down. And at the fifth day, your spouse or partner leaves you, and so on. Then all of a sudden, you are getting hammered with hormonal imbalance. And then all of a sudden, the quantity becomes quality. At the end of the sixth day, if I give you a cat and you thought it's dead, but I bring your cat to life, that still doesn't give you any joy. Then the quantity become quality, meaning that those paths in your brain are set as such that that is now the new you. Now it is extremely hard to come out of it, at least without help. And there's certainly, that is what the kind of depression that as a disease that we talk about now, there is a huge problem here. If you understand that, you understand more than 70% of the medical community, that in United States, and that is what when we talk about mental health in the United States, that is what we need to talk about. That on the second day, when your cat died and your dog died, it's still a reaction. We put you on a medication and we try to treat you chemically.
Mhm.
Whereas at that point, you don't need a medical treatment, you need a supportive treatment, you need a social environment that catches you, you're down. You need somebody be there with you rather than pumping you with the medication that actually, if you understand, most of these medications are serotonin related pathways,
Mhm.
something that totally changed the balance of the hormonal and neurotransmitter in your brain. That part is typically American. There's a problem. We're going to push a button or drop a bomb or put you on a medication, that we are going to fix it for you with the medication in a way that somebody is going to make lots of money with it.
Yeah.
Or the solution, that problem is not American, but the solution we have here is typically American.
Well, and
Now,
it's really tough too, because I think from like a depressed person's perspective, it's much easier to take a pill every morning or a pill every evening than to devote at least 1 hour a week to go to therapy, or devote a certain amount of time per week to find a therapist, decide if that therapist works for you, because not every therapist is the same, and
Yeah.
then make the time to actually go there.
And
I want to go a step forward in that as well. Like, what do you think most of the other rest of the world, like when my mother died, all my aunts came to us. They did not leave us alone. I mean, I wish they would have gone away, but now I understand that was a good thing. That was an intervention. I mean, obviously that was the worst time in my life. But when my aunts were there, they put a show up. Literally, collapsed on the floor and they were foaming from their mouth. And I had to take care of them. So sort of the whole
It's a
family.
distraction.
No, the whole family, we shared the misery together.
Hmm.
Okay? So they were my the therapy that I know there are other people who feel miserable about that event. It's not that I don't have to share. That's one of the problems that many times very high professionals, especially in the United States, they think they're alone in this. There is nobody else they can share it with them. You don't even talk to your family because as soon as you talk to your family, they give you even harder time that instead of taking the pressure and the sadness away from you, they sometimes they make you even responsible and they tell you you should go to a therapist, you should go get a medication and so on. Because the reason for that is my aunts, they took a week off and they were in our house. I had to feed them. Whereas your aunts, they have their own work. They cannot go and miss a week from the work and so on. In the Western societies, we become so individualistic. They have their own problem.
Right.
Mhm.
They cannot come and spend time with you. Whereas when my mother died, it was truly a family event.
Yeah, but
Yes.
sometimes depression, like you said, isn't situational.
Mhm.
Sometimes
Yes,
you're
yes,
just
yes.
depressed. And in that case, your family can't come every single day of your life. That's not realistic. Even if they
These are
can take
different
off a week,
situations.
that's why, like I said, you need to take matters into your own hands, not only be focusing on medication, but therapy, hobbies. What's your diet like? Are your sleep schedules like? What were you going to say, Alyssa?
Yeah, back on the therapy side of things, we often hear, especially from, being medical providers, they're always saying the first thing is therapy. The thing we neglect to understand is that therapy works as much as you want it to. Meaning we could sit you down in front of a therapist for days and days and days. And if you are not receptive and open to making a change or listening to what they have to say, therapy is only going to make it worse because then your expectation is I'm going to go to therapy and it's going to fix me. I'm going to get better. Well, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
If you have to be convinced to go to therapy,
Exactly.
you don't have the pre-requirement to really benefit from it.
Mhm.
That's
True.
all it is.
Mhm.
Okay.
But also I want to really emphasize that there's not only one therapist and not only one therapy school. So every therapist is totally different. They're going to have completely different methods and different even styles of conversation. I've seen a lot of different therapists throughout my life, but only one therapist that I ever saw, I really felt like she understands me. She's trying different methods and different techniques, even like physical techniques. So if you see a therapist and
Can you
Sorry?
explain about physical techniques?
yeah, like it was like this type of vibration therapy where you hold on to these vibrating, like I don't know what they are, but they pulse back and forth at different patterns. And then you have to talk about your feelings and kind of say like
Mm.
apologies to yourself and love to yourself while you're doing these vibration things. And I don't really understand how, but while you're doing these mantras, the vibration, like the best way I can describe it is your feelings are underneath the sand and there's layers of sand above it. When it's vibrating, it's taking the sand away and your feelings or your struggles can come up, things that you're repressing and you don't even know it's bothering you. That was really successful for me.
Yeah,
Do you
actually,
want me
that's
to explain? Yeah,
a
go
very
ahead.
common type of therapy they use for PTSD and stuff like that. For example, if you happen to be, a war veteran or whatnot, a lot of the times instead of, for example, vibration, they'll have you talk about your experience while there's a light kind of flashing or like a
Yeah.
pattern going on.
Do you
The idea there is to focus on something else while you recount the experience, so that way you are not as attached to the experience.
do you guys want to know how that works? And it does work. Are you interested to know how that works?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What percentage of the things that happen in your body are you aware of?
0.1.
Very good. Less than 1%.
Oh.
Nice.
Like your body burning the glucose, you have no idea. You're breathing, you're exchanging oxygen, you have no idea. Your suprarenal gland is producing cortisol and doing a lot of things, you have no idea. Your heart is compressing itself and pushing blood throughout your body. You have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because these things are happening unconsciously, but we know very well. If you connect the light, that you get a visual feedback and you have a pulse, something that measures your pulse and blood pressure. If you get a visual feedback about your heart rate and blood pressure, you can consciously modify your blood pressure. You just have to learn it. You literally, there's a light that it goes from red to green and it pulsates. And then you sit there and then you just look at that. And then all of a sudden, if you do it long enough, you can make the red become green and change your blood pressure, or you can make it pulsate faster just by thinking about that. Everything is, your brain is doing it unconsciously, the same way that you're breathing unconsciously, but take a deep breath now. Now you did it consciously. So you can influence those unconscious things with your conscious mind if you train yourself, because they're all connected inside of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
That's what meditation, that what Zen is. That is how you can create this feeling of happiness inside by meditation and Zen. You are influencing all those pathways. There is a connection there. You just have to find the path from your conscious there. Now, in the same way, those vibration you feel, a visual light you feel. Now, if you concentrate, if you connect an unconscious phenomenon in your body to a visual stimulation or vibrational, something that you can feel, with some training, you can actually influence those unconscious paths in your brain. And I can give you some example, and then this can go even much, much further. There was a study, it was actually a sad study, wouldn't be ethical these days, but they did put electrode in the brains of the monkeys, and there was in one room, they could go and give themselves a stimulation in the ventromedial aspect of the hypothalamus. In the other room, they could go get food. All the monkeys stayed in the room where they could give themselves stimulation, and they starved to death. They would prefer to give themselves in the one area of the brain stimulation rather than go and eat in the other room. Because that area of the body was for satiety and joy and pleasure. Ventromedial aspect of the hypothalamus nucleus, a very small nucleus. That nucleus is part of your brain. You have connection there. And imagine what? Those monkeys, they give themselves stimulation because monkeys have no other way to control that. They don't have a conscious mind that can do that. But have you heard of those Indian, they call them, I think, fakir or something else in India, that they do like crazy thing, that they sit on sharp thing, they walk on hot thing, they sit on a stone or on something sharp. They don't eat for a long time. They are in such control of their unconscious mind. They are not hungry. When they walk on the hot coal or the burning things, they can't suppress their pain. They are in such control of their unconscious mind. And they do that with meditation and so on. So this is the modern way of controlling on your unconscious life, which is more than 99% of what's happening in you. What that means is that when you get a vibration or a visual stimuli, then you get always closer and closer to control what you want to control, and eventually you will be able to do that. No different than when you ride a bike, you fall and fall and fall until those paths are set in your brain, then you can ride the bike with no problem. So, and we in the United States and in Western medicine, we have completely neglected until recently. We just call it bullshit or non-scientific and so on. Whereas everything is in your mind, everything you are your brain, and everything you feel, even when you see me, you don't really see me. You have a model of me in your brain that you're activating, so you can truly manipulate that. So I'm happy, Amanda, you talked about that. And I'm seeing that in the next few decades, we get a lot more into what we know has existed for thousands of years in other cultures and so on, but we are just start to understand that.
Yeah, definitely.
So this physical thing, can you explain some other physical, the treatment for depression that you're aware of?
That's the only one that I've ever experienced. So that's the only thing I can really have firsthand account of. Have
What
you,
about-
do you guys know of any other physical things?
Besides back in the day when they would take a nice lobotomy to you to try and
Yeah.
help fix your mental health disorders.
I know that with I mean this isn't like long term, but I know that being around animals, like petting animals can lower your blood pressure and that can help with some of your emotions. And then also I read recently that listening to the sound of birds is actually supposed to really help your depression.
Generally nature, and that is as well something we actually know. Just the sound of water can calm you down. Now,
Love
and
white.
that is,
Yep.
yeah, and that is historical. Now, this is actually, they did a study on that. Don't ask me who paid for that. But why, when I say you a park, let's go for a walk in the park. What do you imagine in your brain, what kind of model do you build in? Dominic, you first. I said, let's go for a walk in the park. What comes to your mind?
Lake on the left, bench on the
Right.
right. We're walking on a sidewalk, and there's a playground and birds.
And okay, what else? No, you said, I'm going to go through that. You said four major things. Alyssa, what else come into your mind? Or
The
what
parks I grew up in were always kids running around screaming. There was always
running around, open field, running around, open field. Okay, what else?
open fields, South Dakota. It was always
Okay.
playgrounds. I mean,
Okay.
we didn't have parks like we have parks up here, so there wasn't really trees. It was more flat ground.
Okay, Amanda,
Pavement.
okay,
Well, mine's the park that I usually go to with Lily. So it's dirt road, lots of trees, a little stream.
okay.
Yep, lots of trees, a little stream, some birds. But the road I prefer unpaved. I really prefer dirt road.
Okay, unpaved road. So let's bring it together. Water, open field, trees. Surprisingly, not too many trees, or otherwise it wouldn't be a park. If it's just all trees.
No, it's a nature park.
Well,
I don't go to parks for children.
okay, well, the usually park that most of people choose, there are trees,
No.
but the trees are not dominating it.
Mhm.
Or most of the parks that we build it with water, path to walk, field, open field, trees, but not too many trees, and animals, especially birds.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? What is the natural place that it's sound like that in Africa?
Safaris.
Serengeti.
Hmm.
Serengeti. That is where the cradle of humanity is. That is where we grew up. That is where we were safe. Okay? So, open field, so you see a predator long away. There are not too many trees that the predator can hide, but there's enough tree that you can hide. There is water, because without water, there is no life. And there is birds, because where there is water, there is always birds. Green, there are lots of animals that you can catch, but there's lots of animals that the lion prefer the other animals than you. This is the cradle of humanity. That is still in our unconscious mind, and everything that is in our unconscious mind calms us down, give us joy. give us the pleasure and help us to center and concentrate. Oh, I'm not going to be eaten right now. It's a good day. Okay. And certainly sun, right? Sun, Serengeti, lots of sun, Africa, and so on. So you see, that's another proof that we are all from Africa. This is actually scientifically evaluated that is why wherever you go to any park in the entire world, you have the parks that have running water that are preferred by 7 to 8 out of 10 people to the parks that don't have and that's why we put how do we simulate running water in a park?
A waterfall or a fountain.
Fountain.
Here you are, okay? That is why we love fountains, Even in Las Vegas, the fakest place on the world, they have as many waterfall and fountains. And so do you see how all of that goes to the source where we are created? Okay, well, it is, I know Amanda has to go, and I don't believe we covered anything with the
No, we did not cover anything. So we're
No.
going to have to do a part 2 on this, but I think we have a good start on
This is a good intro.
a good start on what is depression, and that depression isn't just a United States thing, but medicating it is more a United States thing.
Correct. And I want to add to that, in cultures that they go through really, really hard time, depression doesn't exist in those cultures. Like people who are during the Second World War, where people were dying right and left and starving, depression was almost unheard of.
Yeah, that's
I'm
one
not
thing I did want to talk about when you were saying that every culture has depression. I was thinking, yes, every culture has depression when they have the ability to recognize it, but sometimes they don't have the time to recognize
They
it.
don't have they cannot afford to be
Yep.
depressed.
Mhm.
Okay, that is a sad thing. You cannot afford to be depressed.
Hmm.
Okay, so and that is a luxury we have to be able to afford to have support. And not that it's a good thing to be depressed, but it all come back to Steven Pinker. Read Steven Pinker, okay? Okay.
Thank you guys for watching. This was Essence of Medicine. Today we talked about mental health in the United States. I'm Amanda Armagost.
I'm Melissa Haberger.
Dominic Moore.
And Dr. Bhatti for Essence.